Hi everyone, Raphael here. Today I want to talk about ecstatic witchcraft and how it relates to the divine, dragons, time, and sacred geometry. Now my website is called Cult of the Divine, and this is because I approach my ecstatic witchcraft practice from a mysticism type exploration in relation to my connection with the earth. So I recently wrote an article on my website, which is cultofthedivine.com, if you want to read more about these topics. But I'm also going to go over some of them today here and just kind of share what I've been working with and how dragons are featuring more and more heavily in my practice and becoming like key anchor points for my magical and spiritual work. So let's start by defining ecstatic witchcraft and what this actually means. And I'm sure if you talk to different people, it'll mean different things to different people. But some of the ecstatic witchcraft traditions could be related to the reclaiming tradition, which Starhawk is a figure in, and you could read her book, The Spiral Dance. It's a classic. I highly recommend it. And it looks at life as a relationship, everything being interrelated. Everything is in relationship with each other. We are in relationship to the one, the all, source or goddess, sometimes called the star goddess, and everything is in relation to everything else. So I would take this view when I approach my practice, and you might call this pantheism. And this is that the divine and the universe are one, and they're contained within each other. So there is no transcendent God that's beyond all of us. Everything is here. It's all within us. It's all in the material world. It's all manifested through us. And I like to view people that way. It helps me have a lot of compassion and get into that space of unconditional love and respect and care for other people and for the earth when you are looking at everything as a manifestation of the all or source or the one spirit that we all come from. And some people will call this God or goddess, and that's up to you, if you relate to this concept. And I do deeply, and I've always felt a sense of the divine and like godlike presence. And one of the really interesting things about what's called sometimes a left-hand path or in occult studies or esotericism and in ecstatic practice is that we are working on ourselves in order to bring that godlike essence to fruit through our own physical vessel. So our bodies are a container for the divine, and we are working on developing that part of ourselves. Now, in the fairy tradition or Anderson fairy tradition, the god self, it's called, is conceptualized as a bright blue white orb star that rests above our head. And there are practices you can do to call this part of yourself into your body and to bring this God essence into your being and in alignment with the rest of you, in alignment with what is called the fetch soul and in alignment with what is called the talker soul. And I really like these practices because it just helps me feel more grounded and centered within myself, and to kind of bring all the different parts of me together into one being. And I know my body is carrying all of this soul or divine essence through this life, and I want to treasure and value that and honor that experience that I'm having. So that is just a little introduction to kind of the foundation of where ecstatic witchcraft is coming from and why I'm taking a pantheistic and more mysticism kind of view when I approach my witchcraft practice. And as you start unlocking this godlike essence and this experience of divinity in all things, you start to feel what could be termed an ecstatic relationship with nature, with life. It brings on feelings of awe and wonderment. It helps produce a sense of power and just complete surrender to the beauty of this existence and to this experience that we are having. So that is kind of one way to describe it. Okay, so what are some of the tools that we might use in an ecstatic witchcraft practice? So this is one of my favorite things to work on in witchcraft, and that is moving into trance or altered states of consciousness at will. So what this means is, we're in our regular ordinary consciousness mind. An example of not being in ordinary consciousness is when we're sleeping and we're dreaming and we're in we're in a different realm. Something else is happening. We're not fully conscious. We're not aware of our bodies necessarily. And that's just one version of the many states of consciousness that a human being might be in. So in ecstatic witchcraft, you're really going for these trance states that put you into a non-linear state of mind, or into the liminal. So whenever you cast a circle, you're chanting, you're dancing, you're singing, you're connecting to the divine, you're meditating, all of that are gateways. They're opportunities for shifting into the altered state of mind and deeper into trance states in which you can communicate with spirits more easily, you can see visions more easily of the spirit realm, and you might be able to connect to your sense of God or God-like self a little more easily. It's also a great space to be in if you're casting a spell or you want to have more effective magic and really sense energy. Let's talk about ecstatic witchcraft and the divine. So since my website, is called Cult of the Divine, I want to kind of talk about why I use this and what my relationship to the idea of divinity or the divine is. So ecstatic witchcraft is a path for direct experience with the mystery. And the mystery might be another term we use for whatever life is, however we got here, consciousness. What is it? Where did it come from? These are questions that a mystic might ask, and it's a very, it's at home in the world of ecstatic witchcraft too, to ask these questions. This path, if you're interested in ecstatic witchcraft, is really for people who want to be in a deeply embodied study of consciousness and awaken your godlike essence. There's a deep calling to investigate, like, who is the divine, or what is the divine? What does divinity mean? And how are we connected to the greater cosmos, which would include the cycles of life, death, birth, regeneration, past lives coming back through physical reality. And we all have a different experience of what this might be. We all have our own kind of thing that we're bringing to the table. If we've ever contemplated this, our own backgrounds, our own religious upbringings, if that's a part of your life. And so all of that is going to influence, how we make sense of what is life, what is being alive, and what is being conscious, and what is consciousness made of? What is it? So I'm just going to pose some questions, and you can contemplate them if you want. I'm not going to answer all of them because, I don't have all the answers. These are things I sit with in contemplation and meditation, and meet through my spirit working. So when I meet with angels or plant spirits or gods, I'm engaging with the idea of consciousness and what that is. So here are the 4 questions for you to contemplate in your magical practice. 1 is, what is consciousness? Huge question. I don't have the answer, but it's definitely something, I want to deepen and connect with more. Where did consciousness come from? So this is where witches who are interested in cosmology might want to start deep diving, is like, what was that first moment of creation? What was that first moment of consciousness or awareness that came into this reality that created this whole physical material experience that we're having? Question number 3, why do we experience consciousness? Why is that happening to us? Why does that happen to other spirits? Why does that exist? And question number 4 is, does consciousness have an ending or a beginning? I don't know, but I think it's an interesting question to contemplate, to know, like, does this lead anywhere, or has it led anywhere, or is time all collapsed in on itself? And the idea that, like, everything is happening now and at once. If that's the case, then how are we experiencing everything moment to moment, and how is time slowed down for us? How does linear time exist in our conscious awareness, and how does that relate to consciousness having a potential ending or beginning? Okay, so some people say that this differentiated experience, like, I'm in a body, you're in a body. Some spirits are not in a body, but they're, like, still its own something, it's a separate entity to us. We can experience things like that, like a rock is separate from me, and spirit feels separate from me. And so some people believe that all of this differentiated universe is God experiencing itself. And many people who do psychedelic journeys and that kind of thing report that. So it's like everything is one mind, and all of this is just little parts of God that are deepening into a soul experience or a version of God. Okay. So the story goes in witchcraft lore that God longed to experience herself. This desire was so intense that it caused an explosion, which might be referred to as the Big Bang, or in Kabbalah, maybe the shattering of the vessels. And this dispersed divine energy all throughout the universe or throughout existence. And we might call this divine energy, consciousness. We might call it light, or we might call it sound. Let me know what you think. What is divine energy, actually? What is it made of? It is said that we will all return to this timeless, undifferentiated space after death, after this physical experience, and that everything eventually will be reabsorbed into the one divine, into the one. So, you know, if everything, though, is happening at once, that means we're already there, we're already in that, and we're just having this other experience here and experiencing something from a different perspective. Like the central Faery or Anderson Faery tradition prayer goes like this. Holy Mother, in you we live, move, and have our being. From you all things emerge, and unto you all things return. Now this idea can be found in Bible verses and other forms of mystical poetry in which people are speaking to the earth as this is where we've come from, and we will return back to this source or this one or the divine at some point through the journey of our soul. In ecstatic witchcraft, a personal discovery and experience of the divine consciousness and the mystery is engaged with experientially. And this is why it's hard to put into words what this mystery really is. And these are things that need to be experienced in the body, in the physical form. It can't be just thought of in the mind or spoken of. They are experiential. And that is part of what makes ecstatic witchcraft what it is. So it's not just an intellectual study of magic or witchcraft, it's a experience of power, mystery, and the divine. These types of practices require direct experience. They don't translate to words or descriptions, and encounters with the divine found in other traditions too, like Kabbalah and Sufism, and they're hinted at in things like poetry and art, dance, and music, because these are, I guess, divine expressions of this experience. So take, for example, you're looking at a photo of the pyramids in Egypt. The photo might be interesting, you might find it beautiful, it might be evocative, but there's nothing like taking your physical body and going to the pyramids, being in front of them, maybe going in them. That experience will live differently in your body than looking at a photo. And that's one way to describe the mystery, is something that must be experienced through you, through your vessel. Touching the divine is ineffable. But ecstatic mysticism practices help induce these states and open us to spirit and help us cultivate the sensuous relationship with the universe. It's something I really just love about ecstatic witchcraft and why I center this godlike essence or the divine around my practice. I moved inside because it started to get loud outside. So the next thing I want to talk about is the void. Now, this is a space that we can experience when we use ecstatic practices like shamanic journeying, really intense breath work. I know people reach from profound states of meditation and other types of trance-inducing practices. So what is the void? So I feel like there's kind of two versions of the void. There's one version that might be more like what's called the abyss, and this to me feels like more of an underworld, dark void where things are gestating, and this is the facing your fears, facing your shadows. And there's another version of the void which is experienced more like what's in mystical states or divine states. And this is when you go into, you leave your body and you go into a space that feels like nothing, but it's all white. It's just a space of pure energy, and you experience this feeling of like being outside of your body, and your body might be like, it's an expanded state of consciousness. So finding you're feeling your physical form, or feeling really dense or heavy, like all of that goes away when you're exploring this void. That feels like deep love, complete serenity. It feels like eternal, and it just has that frequency of love and of the heart space. And this is the void I'm referring to. Not that I don't like the other one. I think all the voids are great to explore in your practice, but this is the one that I'm referring to. So the thing I want to say is that in this void space where it just feels like unconditional love and eternity and a boundaryless space of pure energy, you get into a consciousness state that feels like the phrase, I am. Now, I am is used as a way to say, I exist, we are here, we are conscious of our existence, so we think. And the statement, I am, when you really tune into like your heart space and you just sit with that, is our godlike state, or is a state of our divinity. And like Moses, and meets God at a burning bush, and this bush speaks to him and says, I am that I am, or that's what it would be translated into English from the Hebrew, Aye, Asher, Aye. And the I am that I am, is a version of the I am statement. And if we look at this story from a pantheistic perspective, then we're looking at Moses, the bush, the fire, and the voice of God all as one being. And it can be interpreted as a we exist, I am. And it's a very powerful place to be in, and a very potent phrase to sit with, an idea to sit with, that we are God, we are divine, as is everything else in this material experience. I want to try this exercise to find a sound, a tone that goes with your I am God space. So one way to do this is to contemplate on the I am and to intuitively connect with a vowel sound that you want to vocalize. So without overthinking it, I invite you to try this now. You can close your eyes, take a deep breath, tuning into your heart, and just sense this state of I am. And from this state, just using your intuition, just start toning, chanting, make a sound. What wants to come out? I'll do one. I'll do what's coming through for me. Okay. And if I was going to keep going, I would chant that tone, for a good 5 minutes, doing a deep breath in between, or some like deep inhales and exhales, to get myself into an altered state and to connect with my divinity, to connect with that side of me that's just an expression of the divine, an out-breath, a tone, a sound. And yeah, let me know if you try that exercise and what comes through for you, and if you're surprised, and if you can do it, if you can release your voice, if you can like get that God sound out through your throat chakra, and just free it and see, what do you sound like? What kind of sound wants to come out of your being? Okay, so next I want to talk about dragons. Okay, are we ready to talk about dragons? So I have a feeling that dragons are connected to time. I feel that they are connected to the cycles of the planet and that they are guardians of locations. And if I physically go to the location, then I can work with that dragon from anywhere, but they are tied to certain land spaces. And I think that's an important part to know about their magic, because then to me, I interpret that as they are very much tied in with the earth and really connected to the deep planetary cycles. So they carry a primordial intelligence. These spirits are very, very ancient. Their consciousness, if I'm to put human consciousness and dragon consciousness on like a timeline, it feels older than ours. They feel more mature. They feel more like rooted into this earth and grounded in the type of consciousness that they are carrying. And I think that's an important thing for us to recognize, is that we can learn something of what ancient primordial magic maybe felt like or feels like. And we can also engage with dragons to work with that type of power and work with those ancient energies, things that are, thousands and thousands and thousands of years old. So even though time might not exist and everything's collapsed in on itself, or is now in the moment, we still have the tools of understanding time in a linear way, of like there's a past and a future, and there are ancient forms or experiences that this earth has gone through. I'm going to read this section because I don't want to miss anything. So, how do ecstatic witches work with dragons? Witches might work with dragons in their rituals. Dragon spirits can be called upon when casting a magic circle, using special chants to call in dragons for each of the directions. So, when you cast a circle, in the traditions I come from, or I've studied, we do 7 directions. So we do north, east, south, west, above, below, and then center, the I am, or the heart. And I've met dragons or worked with dragons that go with each one of these directions, or at least the 4, north, south, east, and west. And each of those dragons has shown me a chant to activate and call their power into the circle and to call them in, as along with like the other guardians and elements and things that I'm calling in to the circle. Okay. Dragons also use color as a way to communicate with us as practitioners. So a dragon's color can indicate like what kind of element it's connected with, what kind of things it activates. I've noticed that a lot of the dragons I've met, when I'm working dragon magic, it'll start to rain, storm clouds roll in, and I really experience them as healers of the earth. And when they come through, they are bringing cleansing. Like water is very cleansing, and storms can be very cleansing and healing to the planet because of it. And I just feel like activating their energy can be kind of like a reset for a space and help activate that part of land magic. Okay, but the colors will indicate, if they're more fiery or if they're more healing oriented. Some of the dragon colors I work with are gold, and one is red, one is black, and these colors all kind of indicate like what realm they're from, or how they're going to show up. The dragons are also connected, like I said, with serpents and other reptiles, lizards, and they're also connected with dinosaurs, birds, and lions. I don't know exactly what this is, but in the ancient world, like Mesopotamia, there was a spirit that was like a dragon and a lion mixed, and the griffin is kind of a version of that. And it just seems like dragons also have some feline, cat-like, lion type of energy to it also. So I think that's really interesting. And then they're also connected to dinosaurs, and that makes sense, and to birds, as dragons fly, and just ancient animals like dinosaurs, feels very dragon-like. Okay. They're deeply tied to the land and magical land rites that bring healing, rain, storms, and cleansing. Dragons create openings across time. So this is why I think they're the guardians of time, is that when you connect with the dragon magic, you feel connected to another time, another realm, and it puts you into that non-linear state, into that like ambiguity of like that dreamlike lucidity of what, not being here, not being there. and they seem to open a portal to this other dimension, to this spiritual dimension. And it feels like they're sharing this ancient energy across time, across space, and across time. Okay. Connecting with dragons can be a powerful energetic exchange that deepens and transforms your ecstatic practice. This work can put us in touch with the primordial stirrings of creation and what might be called like the original magic, or the first like stirrings of magic for humanity. Okay, next I'm going to talk briefly about sacred geometry and dragons. If you want to know more about this, then I would recommend you check out the article on my website because I go into more detail about 3 sacred shapes and how I feel like they're related to time and space, and how dragons are seem to be associated with the maintenance of time and space, and how these sacred shapes, contemplating them, working with them in your practice, can deepen our understanding and our work with these spirits. So the first one is the Ouroboros, which is the serpent or dragon eating its own tail, and it's a circle. And I feel that this symbol, represents a few different things: that time is cyclical, or we're experiencing time as cyclical, that death or destruction, eating and consuming is a part of the cycles of time, as the dragon's consuming its own tail, and that everything is change and movement. So when you think about the first moments of creation, like let's use the Big Bang, right, as an example, everything's just been moving ever since, vibrating, atoms vibrate, like nothing is static, nothing is still in this universe. And the Ouroboros, I think, is hinting at that magic, that everything is in motion. And I like to think of this as the divine is constantly evolving, other spirits and gods are constantly evolving, and that we can always change and they can always change, and that is just an element of engaging with life, aliveness, consciousness, that nothing is completely still. Okay, the next shape is called the Torus, and I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, and that is a donut shape. I'll put an image of it here. That is a donut shape, and it's often seen in the tree of life. So the tree of life, where there's the trunk, and then there's the branches, and then there's the roots, and everything is connected through this center point. And what I think is super fascinating is that the human heart, it's called the toroidal magnetic field or something like that. I'll put a reference below if you want to do some research. Extends for I think a few feet outside of our body. So our heart is generating this electromagnetic field that takes this torus shape. And again, this is a shape where, like the Ouroboros, it's feeding back in on itself. It's constantly looping, and it's another dimension of time is cyclical. Things are moving in a cycle, in circles and patterns. And I just think that's a really special aspect of understanding what ecstatic witches can do, which is we can sit here in this material reality and we can look at everything from this physical plane and perspective, and we can also see things from these wider, larger cycles of time, and we can see ourselves as beyond the body and the parts of the soul and the God self and these different aspects of us as able to move and shift and change through these different cycles, realms, and ways of being. Okay, the last shape is the spiral, and I love the spiral for so many reasons. Its association with the goddess, it's been used in our ancient art throughout the world. The spiral has represented life and cycles, and one way I like to work with the spiral is in my magical practice. I use it to create portals in space. So one thing that I do, and the spirits showed me this one day while I was on Amanita muscaria mushrooms, is to draw. I usually use my fingers, but you could use a wand or something else, and I draw a clockwise circle, spiral, and then I do a counterclockwise circle, and then I imagine that space opening up, and it creates a vortex of energy around me. And you could do it huge, and you could do it small, and it's just kind of an immediate way to shift into the spirit realm and to start connecting with the other side. It helps thin the veil. And usually I'll accompany that with some kind of chanting and then other body postures and magical rites to like finish the whole sequence. But the spiral is a magical symbol as it represents, you know, how power flows through this universe. It's the shape of our galaxy. And it also represents like the circle of time that we're going through. And even if we're like moving towards the center of the spiral, we might come round again and again to the same patterns, to the same cycles. And it just shows how we're all working through the patterns, and we're all working through the cycles. All right. So yeah, if you want to read more about those things, check out the article on my website because I go into a little more detail. Okay, so I'm going to close this video. I know it got really long, but I felt like I had a lot I wanted to cover. That I feel that the dragons are wanting more witchcraft practitioners to find them and start working with them, to meet them in certain land spots, and to help unleash their magic. I don't know the purpose ultimately of like why a human being and a dragon should work together, but if I ever figure it out, I will be happy to share. And if anyone has any ideas, I would be happy to hear them, because there's so much about witchcraft and magic that is a mystery, and that is just trusting in our divine knowing, our intuition. And yeah, I would like to know, what's the ultimate purpose of any of this? The land magic of time, why does it exist? You know, why are we conscious? I want to know. I question, and I like to grapple with these concepts, and it helps me root into my witchcraft. So yeah, I encourage you to work with dragons if you feel like you're ready for that kind of step in your magic. They aren't the easiest spirits to work with. Like warnings that come with, you know, working with Jinn or Faery, you know, it requires a lot of self-knowing and a lot of confrontation with your own shadows. And if you have done a lot of this work or are willing to do a lot of this work, then dragons might be a supportive spirit to have in your practice. So let me know if you have any questions about working with dragons, how to meet them or summon them, how to feed them. So you need to do all the regular things that you would do with other spirits. You give offerings, you incorporate them into your practice, and, you know, build a relationship with them, which is all from the heart. So my final message is that if you're an ecstatic witch, then you are an open heart-centered being. All of our magic comes through connecting with the heart center, with being grounded in this part of ourselves. It ensures that we stay compassionate and grounded, I believe, to have an open heart center. And it also is our bridge into the spirit realm. So an open heart is what allows us to remain receptive to the spiritual dimension, to the unseen, to things that are unknown, to things that are occult or hidden or secret. And maintaining this part of self, I just think, is such a vital part of the ecstatic witchcraft path. And it also leads to a deep, loving relationship with the divine, which is also us. And the ultimate goal is like a love of everything, to be a vessel for love, for divine love. And that is the message I will leave you with today. So thank you so much for watching and making it to the end of this video. I'm really excited to share this ecstatic witchcraft with you, and would love to connect. So if you are interested in that, just leave a message and we can talk more. All right. Hope you all have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye.